The Second Battle of Ypres. The Second Battle of Ypres was mainly a diversionary effort, and it was the only major German offensive on the Western Front in the year 1915. The Germans' goal was to occupy the Allied forces on the Western Front, while they focused most of their military might to defeat the Russians on the Eastern Front. If the Allies observed that the Germans were not making any advances on the Western Front, they would send more troops to the Eastern Front, and that would make it far more difficult for the Germans to complete their objective of defeating the Russians. The Germans also wanted an opportunity to test the viability of using chlorine gas in warfare. Additionally, there was an inward bulge in the German front line around the city of Ypres, creating a weakness in that area. The German commander of the Fourth Army wanted to attack Ypres in March, but the battle did not commence until later. The forces involved in the battle were the British, the French, and the Canadians on the Allied side. The Germans were the only Central Power involved in the battle. The battle began on April 22, 1915, when the Germans released 5,700 gas canisters containing 168 tons of chlorine gas on 2 French divisions, heavily disabling the 4 miles of Allied lines that it affected. Chlorine gas causes asphyxiation, chemical burns, blindness, and many other harmful effects when high levels are present, so it turned out to be an extremely effective and deadly weapon. Of the 10,000 French soldiers that were affected, 5,000 died within 10 minutes of exposure to the gas, and the remainder were blinded, and about 2,000 were captured as prisoners of war. However, the Germans had no idea the gas would be so effective, so the Germans failed to take advantage of the vulnerable French lines, and not much ground was gained by the Germans. The cautious advance of the Germans was halted by a British counteroffensive led by General Smith-Dorrien. A second German gas attack on April 24th pushed the Canadian lines back even further. By May, the Allies had retreated almost to the city of Ypres. However, on May 3rd, the Germans sustained heavy casualties from the British troops that relieved the Canadians. The fighting continued on May 8th to 13th and again on May 24th to 15th. Additionally, rags soaked in urine were distributed throughout the Allied ranks as makeshift gas masks, as it was found that the ammonia in urine neutralized the chlorine, reducing the effect that the toxic gas had on the soldiers. The battle ended on May 25, 1915, resulting in no significant gains for German forces. The bulge in the German front line was still present, and the city of Ypres had not been taken. There were an estimated 69,000 to 80,000 Allied casualties, about 59,000 British and 10,000 French. There were approximately 35,000 German casualties. The difference in numbers is explained by the usage of chlorine gas by the Germans, giving the Allies a great disadvantage. The battle produced a successful diversion of Allied forces and proved that the chlorine gas that the Germans tested was extremely effective, which had great significance and shaped the way the rest of the war was fought. The French and British began developing their own chemical weapons and gas masks as well as other protective clothing, and the Germans continued to develop their chemical weapons as well. Chemical warfare in World War I caused over 500,000 injured and 30,000 dead, including about 2,000 Americans. Military strategists defended poison gas by claiming that it reduced the number of casualties in offensives by reducing the enemy's ability to respond, but those claims were negated by the fact that both sides had gas masks and protective clothing that allowed them to function as normal even under gas attacks. Here are my citations.